Hey guys, my name is Jason. My YouTube channel is Age of Deception. We're going to talk about diet for this this video. So, as far as diet is concerned, my YouTube channel, if you're new, is called Age of Deception. But when it first came out, it was called Fast Keto Prime. It's when I adopted a ketogenic diet, intermittent fasting, and I had such health benefits, lost 60 pounds. Um, and I was so passionate about it that I wanted to share it. I was talking about it with everybody like a fanatic, and I figured, you know what? I'm just going to do videos, and it was a way of getting the information out there. So for this video, I did like a really small PowerPoint presentation. It's not that large, but it's looking at the health situation that occurred when the agricultural revolution happened between 10 and 12,000 years ago. Prior to that, humans were hunter and gatherers. They ate animal food, and they did probably eventually through their culture figure out that certain plants, they could gain a certain amount of calories or some nutrients from it. But mainly they were eating animals and ruminant animals, etc., especially the organs. So they would actually go after the organs now, unless you started eating organ meats as a child or young, or you're within that culture. It's pretty hard to stomach. I tried just eating liver, and I did a video about it. I was gagging, and the whole family. It was kind of fun. So let's see what happened when they stopped having their hunter and gather lifestyle, started to adopt agriculture, mass production of crops. Did they get healthier or did they get worse? We shall see. I'm going to share the screen here. All right. I'm going to move this. First time I'm trying to use Zoom to make a video slideshow. This is kind of a test run. Start from beginning. So the dawn of the agricultural revolution made us sick. So in Science Daily, this is titled Dawn of Agriculture Took a Toll on Health. This was published from Emory University in 2011. So the summary of this is when the populations around the globe started turning to agriculture around 10,000 years ago, regardless of their location, the types of crops, a similar trend occurred. The height and health of people declined. Now, this is a sign of nutrient deficiencies, severe nutrient deficiencies. So when they were doing their hunter and gatherers, eating the organs, prizing the animal fat, eating nose to tail the animals, they were healthy. Of course, their lifespan wasn't very long. Yeah, I know, because there's no antibiotics. You could get one little infection, you could get a tooth abscess, and that was the end of you. Life was very dangerous. Predators, preys, all sorts of things. So it's fun. It's unfortunate that in this modern era where we have advances in the ability to make food production, even livestock in very sustainable ways that regenerate the soil, yet we have all this technology and we've never been sicker. And that's primarily because of the great deception that animal food is poisonous, is bad for your health, and that you can thrive with plants. Plants equals healthy. Animal food, bad. And they started the attack very slowly. It started with fat and cholesterol in the 50s. And then after, now you heard about eggs at one point. Eggs are bad. People always limit the amount of eggs, even though grandma and pop had cream on the table, bacon and eggs every morning. So the pattern holds up across standardized studies of whole skeleton in populations. Say researchers in the first comprehensive global review of literature regarding stature and health during the agricultural revolution, or during the agriculture transition. Many people have this image of the rise of agriculture and the dawn of modern civilization. And they just assume that more stable food sources make you healthier. Mummert says, but early agriculturalists experienced nutritional deficiencies and had a harder time adapting to stress, probably because they became dependent on particular food crops rather than having a more significant and diverse diet. Now, if you look at what we're eating now, if you're eating anything in the middle of your grocery aisle, anything that is packaged that has some kind of writing on the side, you're going to see that the most of it is all plant-based, first of all. You'd be very challenged to see anybody using lard anymore. It's or animal fats. It's all vegetable oils, oxidized, very toxic vegetable oils. There's wheat, there's corn, there's soy. That's it. And a whole slew of chemicals after that. So if you're eating in the middle, technically that's plant-based. But then they're going to say, well, whole food plant-based diet. We don't eat all that packaged stuff in those mock meats. Give me a break. If you look at anything vegan YouTube, all they're trying to do is create these vegan versions of all sorts of animal products because humans crave what they need. Vegans try and say that this is you've just learned this and that humans don't really crave, that it's like almost a drug and an addiction, even though most vegans are just using carbohydrates to keep their energy. And carbohydrates, we know, especially on this channel, anybody who knows ketogenic diets, that glucose isn't an essential nutrient. We can produce glucose by gluconeogenesis. We rely primarily on basically what we're made of, protein, fat, and cholesterol. So eating protein, fat, and cholesterol is what will maintain your body. Vegans that say, look at bulls, look at cows, look how strong they are, and they don't eat any meat. They don't eat animal food. Well, the issue is that we are not ruminant animals. The cow will eat the grass, has the enzymes to transition cellulose, and the microbial environment within all of these chambers in a ruminant animal, the rumen, there's other, there's all sorts of different names of these chambers. I don't know off the top of the head. But what's happening is the cow's not eating the grass. The cow is feeding the bacteria within its digestive tract and creates these fatty acids and other various nutrients. That's why a bull is so strong without eating anything but grass. We're not cows. I know that right now, they're trying to treat us like cows. They want us to be cows, and they want to herd us around into smart cities and feed us basically peasant food. I mean, the peasants used to eat beans, oats, scraps of meat that they could find, bone broth. That was probably the most nutritious thing that they could get. But they were all eating a highly plant-based diet. And the bourgeoisie, the monarchs that had the kings, the queens, whatever, that were over them, knew that if you keep them malnourished, they become they won't rebel. They don't have their wits. They have brain fog. They feel depressed. There's no energy. A well-fed population is a population that'll speak up if you try and screw them over. That's why every cult does a vegan diet. Probably because, okay, so agriculturalists experienced nutritional deficiencies and had a harder time adapting to stress, probably because they became dependent on particular food crops rather than having a more significantly diverse diet. Culturally, we're agriculture chauvinists. We tend to think that producing food is always beneficial, but the picture is much more complex than that, says Emory anthropologist George Armilagos, co-author of the review. Humans paid a heavy biological cost for agriculture, especially when it came to the variety of nutrients. So, okay, look, moved from hunter and gatherer to crops, right? Became sick, nutritional deficiencies. What are we being told is healthy? A whole food plant-based diet. Okay, we'll look at what happens. We'll look at the lack of nutrients. Hey, I've been brainwashed myself. When I thought of like meat and animal food, that was for protein, avoid the fat, and get all your vitamins and your antioxidants with plants and with various fruits, which is a complete lie. The carnivore community, with people that have been truly carnivore up to 10 years, not even consuming anything with so-called vitamin C, they don't get scurvy. Meat, especially organ meats, have high levels of vitamin C. This has never been told to anybody. These recommended daily intakes and stuff, the RDIs on the side that says your daily percentage of nutrients, it's all a crack bull. We'll get into that later. Humans paid a heavy biological cost for their agriculture, especially when it came to the variety of nutrients. Even now, about 60% of our calories come from corn, rice, and wheat. And I think it's about 10% of our intake in the West, probably globally by now. The intake for soybean, these vegetable oils, is about 10% of our diet. And that is something new that never happened until the early 20th century. It's funny how once we removed animal fat and started trying to push this industrialized seed oils and marketing it with lard, Crisco became a replacement for lard, and all sorts of man-made plant oils, which are actually seed oils. People started getting sick. Then they started wondering. They never looked and said, have we changed anything significantly in the diet? Not to mention that cigarette smoking, early 20th century, was happening. Doctors were saying it was fine. So they're wondering by 1950 why all these heart attacks and heart disease and other modern, lifestyle chronic diseases were starting to occur. They say, hey, it must be the fat. It must be what we've been eating since the dawn of man, or at least since after the fall. And okay, so in 1984, Armi Lagos and Emin Cohen wrote the book Paleopathology at the Origins of Agriculture, which drew from more than 20 studies to describe an increase in declining health and nutritional diseases as societies shifted from foraging to agriculture. I think it's important to consider what exactly good health means. Remember, it says the modernization and commercialization of food may be helping us by providing more calories, but those calories may not be as good for us because they're devoid of nutrients. I just pulled a Biden. I love it. Biden, when he goes like this to the microphone, and he whispers, really creepy. Also smelling little kids' hairs. Yeah, let's get on. This is not political. But those calories may not be good for us. You need calories to grow bones long, but you need rich nutrients to grow bones strong. Here's just the citation. So new research, this is by Laura Clark. Before agriculture, human jaws were a perfect fit for human teeth. Now, look, I got my wisdom teeth pulled out. I actually was told when I asked that, how could that doesn't make sense that our teeth don't fit. Why do they grow and they don't fit? They said, oh, it's because of evolution. When we used to be caveman, we had large jaws and we used to fit those teeth. And I believed it. Actually, no. Our jaws become less broad with nutritional deficiencies, especially when corn wheat was introduced. The the broadness of the bridge of your nose, the size of the nasal cavities that allow you to breathe well through your nose. You know how many people have trouble breathing through their nose, modern people? It's like I'm chronically and like I got a big nose. That thing should not be obstructed. But yeah, so we actually like that narrow chiseled jaw. But if you look at indigenous people, if you look at people in the 1850s, 1900, these cultures that were not poisoned by modernity. They have very wide faces, I mean, their teeth, they're just broader. You can really see, and this you can see if you buy Nutritional and Physical Degeneration by Weston A. Price. And guys, like, this is science, okay? This, I'm not going to go into detail. I have two videos that I'll talk about later. I'm going to read the prologue to this book about what this guy found when he left the West and started to visit in the early 1900s areas and cultures all around the world that had not adopted this modern way of living. They were still doing what their ancestors had done. He found that these people had no cavities, superior bone densities, had no cancers. While TB was occurring, they were not catching TB. I'm not going to go through all of this, but please, if you're really serious about knowing the truth so that you're not deceived about this new plant-based and vegan and things like that, please look at this. It's not biased. This guy just went around and looked at healthy cultures. Instead of looking at sick cultures like us and starting to point fingers and trying to figure out what we went wrong, he's like, he had the opportunity to go and look at people that were not suffering yet. And what were they doing? How were they living? And what was their health, their bones? All right. A new study has demonstrated up until about 12,000 years ago, humans had what one of the study's lead authors called almost perfect harmony between the lower jaw and teeth. The big change, scientists say, came from civilization's transition from hunter and gatherers to farmers. The study published this week in PLOS One analyzed the lower jaw and teeth crown dimensions of 292 archaeological skeletons from the Levant, Anatolia, and Europe from between 28 to 6,000 years ago, reports University College Dublin, where the study's lead author, Ron Pinhasi, is a associate professor of archaeology. Our analysis shows that the lower jaws of the world's earliest farmers in the Levant are not simply smaller versions of those of the predecessor hunter and gatherers, but that the lower jaw underwent a complex series of shape changes commensurate with the transition to agriculture. The switch to farming didn't only cause changes to our jawbones. Two studies published last year found that the emergence of agriculture likely precipitated other skeletal changes in humans, causing lighter, less dense bones, particularly around joints. All right. It is also widely accepted that agriculture exacted a steep price in human health, an idea that had its origins in separate research efforts decades ago. In the 1960s, studies of societies that pursued traditional ways of life showed that hunter and gatherers were not continually tormented by barely staying one step ahead starvation. They were even considered the original affluent societies because of the plentiful food and leisure time they were said to possess. All right, let's go back to that. Okay, in the 60s, studies of societies that pursued traditional ways of life showed that hunters and gatherers were not continually tormented by barely staying one step ahead of starvation. They were vibrant, man. And not only that, these hunter and gatherer societies, what would happen is that the elderly people weren't getting dementia. They weren't getting sick. They weren't losing their minds. They stayed sharp, and they became a well of wisdom, of life experience that could be passed down to the younger generations. Once you were able to conceive, the younger people would have sex together and they would have babies, right? And then after, those babies were actually mostly raised by the elderly, all right? And the younger men learned how to hunt with the adult men, and the women learned their position and their jobs around the camp, making clothing, preparing the food, etc., etc. So we see that this small knit community gave purpose even to the elderly. This is what's happening. You see, people search for meaning in life, and they think maybe the meaning of life is the pursuit of happiness, but it's not. If you're trying to find meaning in the pursuit of happiness, life is hard. Okay, life is one damn thing after another with a few commercials of happiness. So happiness does not create meaning. You're blessed when you experience, but happiness comes actually, in my opinion, through adopting responsibility. And these elder people from as child right up to death had responsibilities and maintained meaning in their lives. That's why in the West, we always have this saying, a lot of people don't want to get retired because the minute they retire, they die. I mean, I've seen it happen. A lot of people, especially if they had a profound identity in their profession, people that studied a long time, maybe lawyers, engineers, doctors, stuff like that, uh, they often just work till they die. But these people have such an identity and a status with their position that it's very, they go into depressions. They lose meaning in their life because they've lost any responsibility anymore. And then by then, they're eating this modern diet, they're getting dementia, they're getting diabetes, they're getting sick, and they lose their mind. And therefore, we've lost the wisdom of experiential experience, true wisdom that prior to that, the elderly were able to pass on. Archaeological skeletons examined in the 1970s and early 1980s were seen as indicating that health worsened instead of improved for early agriculturalists. Sorry, I didn't read that well. Archaeological skeletons examined in the 1970s and 80s, early 80s, were seen as indicating that health worsened, okay, instead of improved for early agriculturalists. Taken together, these research findings, along with information liberally borrowed from public health and disease ecology, were the basis for thinking that the establishment of agricultural economies inexorably, led to greater morbidity and mortality, along with a host of societal problems. The process occurred in two steps, reminiscent of Rousseau's 18th century musing on the subject. First, hunter and gatherers, who were initially well off, were beset by various ills once they settled down and adopted agriculture. Second, the situation deteriorated even further when organizationally complex states first developed about 5 millennia ago. So I'm going to read the prologue of this book, Nutrition and Physical Degeneration. And guys, I'm serious. This book it should be read in every family because we've lost all the wisdom of our ancestors. We're being lied to by science, which I'll call scientism. Deceptions in the name of science, with the new scientists are the new priests and Pharisees dishing out truth, and us peasants shouldn't question them. Here is the prologue. All right, let me just read it. The diets of healthy primitives price studies the diets of the healthy primitive price studies were diverse. Some were based on seafoods, some on domesticated animals, some on game, and some on dairy products. Some contained almost no plant foods, while others contained a variety of fruits, vegetables, grains, and legumes. In some, mostly cooked foods were eaten, while in others, many foods, including animal foods, were eaten raw. However, these diets shared several underlying characteristics. None contained any refined or devitalized foods, such as white sugar, flour, canned foods, pasteurized or skim milk, and refined and hydrogenated vegetable oils. All the diets contain some form of quality animal proteins and animal fats from animals eating the foods they would have naturally found in nature. So look at the cows right now. Yes, there are